What's up, folks? How's it going? I've gotten into the practice of only really making YouTube videos when either there's something that I'm thinking that's not being said by anybody, or when there's just an issue so serious I feel compelled I have to say something, I have to have my voice heard, even if only by a couple of people. And we've come to that again. That is the incredible escalation of the situation in Europe. Today we have it right here from Voice of America News, which is the U.S. government's official funded foreign news source. NATO vows retaliation for attacks on infrastructure, blames sabotage for pipe blasts. So as you may know, several days ago there was something destroyed both of the Nord Stream pipelines in multiple locations simultaneously. Also, I heard rumors of another blast yesterday at another location. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but either way, both of the extremely critical Nord Stream pipelines have been severed, and it is now no longer up to speculation as to whether or not this was, it was quite obviously a deliberate act, but now it's being said by both sides, though it's unclear to me because of the complete shutdown of information, really what the position of the Russian government is. But I will read you some more from this article. NATO vowed retaliation Thursday for attacks on the critical infrastructure of its 30 member nations, while strongly suggesting the rupture of two Baltic pipelines meant to send natural gas from Russia to Germany was a direct result of sabotage. Ambassadors to NATO, the West's key military alliance, said in a statement, any deliberate attack against allies' critical infrastructure would be met with a united and determined response. They said 4 ruptures in the pipeline were of deep concern, so there was a fourth. NATO did not accuse anyone of damaging the pipelines, but said that all currently available information indicates that this is the result of deliberate, reckless, and irresponsible acts of sabotage. These leaks are causing risks to shipping and substantial environmental damage. In Moscow, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Thursday that the ruptures in the Nord Stream pipelines would not have been possible without a state actor's involvement. It looks like a terrorist attack, probably conducted on a state level, Peskov said. Russian President Vladimir Putin later told Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan that international terrorism was to blame. Judging by the amount of destruction of the Nord Stream, it's hard to imagine that such a thing could have been taken without a state involvement. It's a very dangerous situation that requires a quick investigation. Some European officials and energy experts have suggested that Russia likely carried out the attacks to benefit from higher energy prices and create more economic chaos in Europe for its support of Ukraine and fending off Russia's 7-month invasion. But other officials urged caution in assessing blame until investigators determine what happened. I'll just tell you, while it's still legal to have an opinion that's different from what the federal government has, I see no logical reason to believe that the Russian government would destroy their own infrastructure, 50% of which was paid for by private and public funding from the Russian government. It's their primary bargaining chip in this entire situation. It has now been completely removed from the table. And I'll go so far as to say that the propaganda from NATO, which NATO, you should know, when they say NATO, they mean the U.S. intelligence agencies, because it's quite clear that the U.S. intelligence agencies and embedded bureaucracy runs the federal government of the United States, and the federal government of the United States is the federal government of the United States is what runs NATO, and the only people with any motivation for this attack, to me, appears to be, in my opinion, to be warmongering factions within the U.S. government, of course supported by other European states, but it doesn't really matter whether they go along with it voluntarily or if we force them into it, because now the situation is such that if they wanted to work out another situation for Russia, another, some sort of agreement, there's no longer any agreement to be had. But, this is the key of the level of propaganda that they have here. Let's see what it says again. Some European officials and energy experts, I understand Spain has directly accused the Russians, have suggested that Russia likely carried out the attacks to benefit from higher energy prices and to create more economic chaos in Europe. What benefit can they get from? They can't deliver the energy now. It doesn't matter. It makes no sense. And to my understanding, both of these pipelines were shut down. The gas that was leaking as a result of because of the nature of these pipelines, they had to remain pressurized with gas, so they released a couple 100 million cubic meters of methane into the atmosphere, which just goes to show what the military media industrial complex really feels about environmentalism. Again, I will say I do not believe that the Russians did this because I can't see any logical reason for them to do it. It really doesn't matter whether they did or didn't, because it's quite clear from what I just read you that NATO will be blaming the Russians. They haven't outright done it, but they will. And I expect to see that development over the coming several days. This is an incredible danger to everyone on Earth. And it really just can't be stressed. Like, I don't want to be a guy that, the world's going to end or whatever. This is one of those things where it could actually happen. This is significantly more dangerous, in my opinion, than, what is often pointed as the most, one of the most dangerous times within the Cold War, which would be the Cuban Missile Crisis. I think this is considerably more dangerous because, I don't think we have anybody of a level head. I don't trust our leadership in any way, civilian or military. I consider it completely bankrupt. I have no trust in them to make a reasonable decision. It should be noted that the Cuban Missile Crisis almost did turn into a war, and there were aspects of the American government that believed, rightfully so in my opinion at the time, we would have won the war with what they would describe as an acceptable number of casualties. An acceptable risk of casualties, which would have been, in the tens of millions likely. It just cannot be stressed enough how incredibly dangerous this course of action is. And if you, again, I just can't see any logical reason to believe that the Russians did this. If they did, that is potentially even more frightening because that means that they're completely unhinged and are acting totally irrationally. One way or another, it says here, right here in plain ink, from the news site funded by the controller of the NATO alliance, NATO vows retaliation. What form will it take? It should be noted that the attack that's already occurred in this was an attack on a infrastructure that was a 50-50, was half Russian anyway. I don't know what they're going to do. They're clearly going to do something because they said they're going to do something. If they don't do anything, that would be so... I hope I'm wrong about this, about everything that's building up here, the exchange that's being developed. If nothing comes of it, that's not a failure on my part to analyze this reasonably. What it would mean is that all the norms of international relations and conflict are completely out the window, and we should question the very fabric of reality itself. Because if nothing comes from this, I would have to question how real anything that's happening is, because the NATO alliance has said in black and white they're going to They believe this was a deliberate, reckless, and irresponsible act of sabotage against their entire alliance of member nations, and that they will have a response. So the thing is, it's like to sit here and say I believe there will be something will develop from this. It will continue to get worse. If I'm wrong, there's no fault in me. I don't even know what to say. I mean, it's quite obvious that this is going to develop further. What am I getting at? There's an imminent risk of the destruction of life as we know it on this planet. If we go to war with the Russians, there will be a nuclear exchange. We may win this nuclear exchange. It won't matter, though, because our lives will be ruined. Maybe we'll kill 80% of the Russian population, and they'll only kill, I don't know, 20% of the U.S. population. Maybe they'll only destroy, maybe they'll only get a chance to destroy 25% of the major metropolitan areas. Maybe they'll only destroy half of the port and shipping capacity. It's quite obvious that the system, the country that we're living in, I can't speak for Europe because I don't live there, but it doesn't look good from what I understand. I don't think our system can withstand the shock of that. And maybe the Russian couldn't either, but that doesn't mean a pile of shit if we're dying here. It doesn't matter if the Russians are shittier than we are. It really doesn't. Beyond the overwhelming specter of the destruction of everyone's futures, at the very least, we should be expecting an equal and opposite reaction. How much damage could be done with the destruction of undersea fiber optic cables, cyber attacks. I believe that's also on. New warnings from Ukraine about looming cyber attacks. What the fuck does Ukraine know about looming cyber? Ukraine's entire government is entirely funded by the United States. This is when you have to start understanding things like when they say Ukraine is talking about looming Russian cyber attacks. It might as well say the Central Intelligence Agency is telling there's going to be Russian cyber attacks, and maybe there will be. There probably will. I believe, like I said, I just don't believe that the Russians did this. It doesn't make any sense. It's not that they're not capable of something like that. It makes no sense. It's possibly the worst thing that could have happened for Putin in his current position, especially if the things they're saying about the battlefield situation in Ukraine are true. I'm not saying that I believe Russia is winning or losing. I don't believe anything I'm being told by the media about it. If they're saying that Russia is losing, I'm going to assume that they're lying to some level, okay? But I don't know. The Russians mobilized. Is it because they're losing, or is it because they see the writing on the wall about what's coming? There appears to be much resistance within the Russian populace to this mobilization. I don't know how much of that is true, how much of it is exaggerated. We know how you can make things look bigger than they are. Maybe they are. Maybe it's falling apart. I'm telling you, the same thing would, even worse, you're not going to be mobilizing the United States. That's not happening. We can't even get the shit. You can't even get groceries on the shelf now. Okay? And there's nothing happening. So I would just advise everybody to keep their ear to the ground. And just remember, you got to think about, where do you live? Okay? How likely is it that where you're at is likely to be targeted? What can you do? In some circumstances, there's nothing you can do. There are some things you can do. I would recommend, if nothing happens, which again, I hope I'm wrong about this, and nothing does occur. But either way, if something happens, you'll be better prepared. If not, it could just be some interesting reading for you. Read up about some rudimentary things that you can do to deal with fallout, blast, other issues involved with natural disasters, loss of electricity, things of this nature. I would hope it wouldn't come to that, but under the current direction, the Russians are not going to back down. And the position that the U.S. government and its allies have taken appears to be one of their desire for regime change in Russia, which I'm telling you, Putin will not go without taking everyone with him. And even if the people of Russia are dissatisfied with Putin, they are not going to allow themselves to become, they're not going to let themselves become our bitches. They've seen what happens when we go try to help countries with their democracy. We're moving towards, we're angling towards a fucking global conflict. This is the same country that we just celebrated the year anniversary of abandoning and running from Afghanistan. It's just so fucking ludicrous. And to see the jingoism of people is shocking. I mean, you can get people behind anything, but here's the thing. My concern is actually increased because, okay, so here's Voice of America News. This is a rather obscure website type thing. Most people don't look for Voice of America News, okay? It's primarily directed towards the international, international consumer. Let's search, let's do CNN. I don't even know this yet. I'm finding it out along with you. Let's see what they say. They're talking about the annexation. This should also be noted that Russia annexed the territory, I guess the Donetsk territory and Crimea, and their position is that anything that happens on that territory will be considered an attack on Russian soil. So they're talking about that here. Putin hosts ceremony annexing. Experts may have recorded a third blast connected to the Nord Stream gas leaks. Opinion, the most likely nuclear scenario. This is on CNN. What is this? With his forces retreating in Ukraine, international allies expressing concern as citizens home fleeing partial mobilization, Russian President Vladimir Putin has reached for the threat of nuclear weapon, revive Western fears of atomic apocalypse. Territorial integrity of our homeland and independence and freedom will be ensured. Yada yada. So how worried are we? I haven't read this yet. I want to find out how worried CNN thinks we should be. So how worried should we be? Here, former British Army officer and former commander of the UK and NATO chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear forces. Take note, motherfuckers that have, listen, and it's slightly jealousy, but take note, people that have fucking 500,000, 1 million subscribers. Learn to fucking read. It's so irritating. Motherfuckers read the fucking words, and I'm reading them quickly. If I read them slower, I'll do it even better. Chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear forces. Read the fucking word. I can't tell you how irritating it is to hear people that are, it's like when you got somebody that is, claims to be a military expert or a historian, and they'll be talking about something, and they'll be talking about cavalry, and Napoleon's cavalry came from the left flank and enveloped. It's fucking cavalry, motherfucker. Learn to say the words that you're reading. That's your whole thing that you're doing. You're supposed to be telling people. Anyway, I'm sorry. It's completely off. I'm a little bit stressed out by the impending destruction of life on Earth. This guy, Hamish D. Breton Gordon, that's a good British name. Former British Hamish D. Breton Gordon. I want to see what he looks like. Okay, maybe, I was thinking he was like a Muslim guy or something, but he's not. Okay. Not that it really matters, it was just interesting. Explains the crucial differences between tactical and strategic weapons, and why all-out nuclear war probably isn't on the cards anytime soon. This person is about to tell us that they can have a war, a limited tactical nuclear war. Breton Gordon, it's all about scale. Oh, I'm sorry, CNN. What's the difference between a strategic and a tactical nuclear weapon? Breton Gordon. It's all about scale. Strategic nuclear weapons are basically Armageddon. Russia and the West, including the United States, Britain, and France, both have almost 6,000 warheads each, which is pretty much enough to change the planet as we know it. This is called mutually assured destruction with the rather ironic acronym MAD. These warheads are fitted with 2 intercontinental ballistic missiles which can travel thousands of miles and are aimed at key sites and cities in the US, UK, France, and Russia. Tactical nuclear weapons, meanwhile, are much smaller warheads with a yield or explosive power of up to 100 kilotons of dynamite rather than roughly 1,000 kilotons for strategic weapons. That said, tactical nuclear weapons can still create huge amounts of damage, and if fired at a nuclear power station, for example, I don't know how to say that, Zaporizhzhia in southern Ukraine could create a chain reaction and contamination on a scale with a nuclear site. What shape are Russia's nuclear weapons in? This guy is going to tell us what is going on. The same intelligence apparatus that told you that fucking Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction is now going to tell us about the state of the Russian nuclear stockpile, like they have any fucking clue, or they're not entirely bankrupt. They should be. They're totally intellectually fucking bankrupt. It's difficult to tell for certain, but my assumption is that Russia's strategic weapons and ICBM are probably in good condition and always ready. It is only Russia's strategic nuclear weapons which now give it parity with the US and NATO militarily, so I expect them to be well looked after. But this is likely not the case for the tactical weapons. The warheads and missiles are probably in reasonable condition, but the vehicles they are mounted are, I believe, and have on good authority, in poor condition. Judging by the state of the Russian army equipment we've seen in Ukraine, this is a fair assumption. It's likely that these launchers would need to travel hundreds of miles to get into a position. It literally doesn't matter, and they're going to talk about strikes on nuclear stations. This is totally asinine. What about weapons playbook? Basically, this person is selling the idea that there might be a tactical nuclear exchange. There won't be, because as soon as anybody uses any nuclear weapon of any size in the current situation as it is right now, it will result in a full-scale nuclear exchange. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that that would occur. That's why I believe that the Russians would not simply... The Russians are not going to use a tactical nuclear weapon on the battlefield in Ukraine. That is fucking insane. And I will say, as sure as I'm sitting here right now, that if they come out and try to claim that they've done something like that, that is a lie. Because it's totally insane. It's crazy. You would never do it because you'd be inviting the immediate destruction of yourself and everything else. And it must be noted that it would lead to the destruction of themselves and everyone else. There are people on the internet that are talking about right now about the capacity of our missile defense, which I believe is highly questionable. But I've been reading people saying we could shoot down 85 to 95% of their ballistic missiles. I don't know if that's true. Even if it was true, what's fucking 5% of a couple of thousand warheads getting through? How many tens of millions of people will that kill? It cannot be overstated how incredibly dangerous this is. There is no good result if we start fighting with Russia. If our government intends to remove Vladimir Putin from power, it will lead to a war with Russia. This is inescapable. If our government did commit this act of sabotage, if the Russians know they didn't do it, if the Chinese come to the determination that we did it, we're forcing an alliance together that is unnatural. I don't believe the Chinese and the Russians are natural allies, but we're forcing them into the same corner. We're accelerating everything. I believe our government is attempting to cover for the massive economic shit show. What did we lose today? Let's find out today. I don't even know yet. I assume something incredible. Dow Jones today. It was down 458 points, 1.54% to close at 29,225.61. It's not good, okay? So, I'm not telling you to freak out or obsess on this. I'm going to just think about it a little bit. Think about what you can do, if you can do anything. I'd say write your congressman, but I don't think they run the country, so I don't know that it matters. I'm concerned really because the people that run the country are just so fucking dumb. They're crazy, but they're really not smart people. And I don't know, when you're dealing with, when you got low IQ people, they have a very difficult time extrapolating out into the future the results of actions. Some of us that are intelligent can figure out what the future results of our actions, but we're crazy, so we do the wrong thing anyway. That's called self-sabotage. But one way or another, the result is the same. You're fucked. It's tremendous missteps. And again, if you disagree with me, if you believe that Russia did it, it doesn't really matter at all whether I'm right about that or not, because the end result is going to be the same. There will be conflict. Again, I just can't be overstated enough. NATO vows retaliation for attacks on infrastructure, blames sabotage for pipe blasts. That's the situation that we're in. I'm sorry this is not more focused, but I just wanted to get my thoughts out there, my concerns. I'm not the only person talking about this, but, some people it's every day with the world's going to end, something's going to happen. I'm trying to keep it limited to the things that I really think that stand out to me. And anybody who has more than a layman's understanding of history knows how dangerous this is and how completely just unprecedented the situation is. So I don't know. I guess I'll leave it at that. If I come up with anything else of interest, I'll toss it out there. Be safe. If you're planning on going on vacation up to the cabin anyway, maybe go early, because I think if anything's going to happen, it's going to happen relatively quickly, potentially over the next several days. If not, I don't know. I don't know what to think. If nothing develops from this, like I said, then you really have to begin to question the entire, just everything about what we're being told. Because if NATO is going to stand here and say that we vow retaliation for attacks on infrastructure, and they don't, and of course they're going to have to come up with a culprit, which they will name within the next day or two. Shit, for all I know, they've done it already. But they're going to have to retaliate against that person, or else NATO isn't worth a shit. Or against that country or whatever, which is Russia, what they're going to say. And if they don't do anything, then their word is shit. If they don't do anything, then what's the point of them existing? So they've already committed themselves to this course of action. Anyway, sorry, like I said, good luck, and talk to you soon.